You're- Hello and welcome. This is Shades in Justice podcast. Hey, I'm your host, Dr. Evelyn Hill. And guess what? We have a fabulous program on tonight. And before we even get into that, let me just say you can always catch me at www.drevelynhill.net. Now, back to our guest. We have with us on tonight Miss Amber Hendricks Newberry, and she is a fabulous acquaintance that I recently met through a mutual friend and family person, Miss Carla Jones. And Miss Newberry, welcome to Shades and Justice.
Thank you, Dr. Evelyn, for having me. I am just honored to be here, and I'm just thankful to be on the show, be on the podcast.
Well, thank you. Well, I tell you, uh, during this brief moment of meeting you and just hearing the information coming out of your mouth, I was just enthralled. So I'm really, really excited to have you on our show. And I think we kind of named this show on tonight Married to the Incarcerated. So we'll talk a little bit about that in just a little bit. But first, we would like to know and hear a little bit about you. Where did you grow up? Were you the baby girl? Were you spoiled? Did you get everything you ever wanted as a little kid?
Well,
Tell us a little bit about you.
okay, awesome. Well, I I'm 44 years old. I just turned 44 actually. On the 9th of
Congratulations and
April.
happy birthday.
Thank you. It's a blessing. It's a blessing to see another day. So I'm very grateful.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm from a town called Gainesville, Texas. It's a North Texas town, right
Uh-huh.
5 minutes from the Oklahoma-Texas border.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it was a town population, I would say of around about 17,000, probably at the time, you know.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah. So it's just one of those rural areas. But and everybody knows from Gainesville, um, the the geographic location is an hour north of
Okay.
Dallas Fort Worth. So
Oh,
that gives
okay.
everybody kind of a the demographic or of where we're located. I was
Uh-huh.
born,
Yes.
and I was the oldest of two.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so I have a sister named Amy, and we grew up, people may think we were spoiled, but I think for the most part they thought, oh, we just um they just thought, they talked, I would say probably well of the girls, you know what I mean? So
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
yeah, my mother and father, Jerry and Carolyn Hendricks, I was born to them. And my cousin Carla that was introduced, my dad is her uncle. So that's
Oh,
how me and my
wonderful.
cousin are first cousins. So,
Wow.
um, yeah, and they come from we came from a big family. So on that side, my grandmother had 11 kids. So
Okay.
yeah, and then on my other side, my mother, she came from a smaller town
Uh-huh.
called Honey Grove, Texas. And it's interesting. I'm gonna tell you this. She it was only her and her brother, and then another sister later that
Uh-huh.
came along. So they're from an even smaller, roots of Texas, and
Uh-huh.
Honey Grove's called the sweetest town in Texas. So yeah, that's
Oh,
where she was raised until the 1970s and when she came to junior high. And then my mother and dad known each other in school and were friends. So
okay.
that's how that went. And so we grew up. My dad had went to school. I think I was the first, well, and I was the first complete in our immediate family, a
Uh-huh.
bachelor's. He had gotten his associates and things, and they had aspired. But I think they wanted, my mom really wanted education. My dad did too, from both of us. And then my sister, she's about three years and 3 months behind me, and so she even accomplished more. So she is a doctor of pharmacy and just
Wow.
received her master's, and so yeah, she's and so we've got a quaint little family, but
Uh-huh.
big in numbers, extended wise.
Yes.
Um,
Well,
just I don't know, love school. We both are just really for education. My sister and I graduated with a bachelor's in of science in fashion merchandising and business marketing. So that's why.
wow. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing about your family. And what
Yeah.
were some of your dreams as a child? And did any of them come true? I know I one week I wanted to be a nurse, and for a
Right.
long time I wanted to just be a movie star. And then I found out I couldn't take blood without fainting, so the nurse part was out, and I lived too far from Hollywood for that dream. I couldn't sing or dance or anything, so none of that manifested. But I've been able to do other things. So, what about
Yeah.
you and your dreams as a child?
I would say I think I've always dreamed to be married with children, a mother at one point, some day. And I think that I still have that thing, as one of my, prayers with God. Um,
Uh-huh.
I would have to say that uh, just uh, wanted to, I think at one point have a professional career like a doctor or an attorney, and never knew that. I think with the attorney aspect of it, I didn't never think it would be in that realm, that would even
Uh-huh.
touch law to this degree. But
Uh-huh.
I would have to say I loved fashion, I love clothes and things like that. Really, uh, interior design, all that. So I have aspired to at first be a fashion buyer. So
Wow. Okay.
yeah.
I love
Um,
that.
yeah, and so I really like I said, I think just being a mother or things of that nature, a
Hmm.
wife, is something I saw growing up. So I've always wanted to be that. I think
Yes.
my sister, she was the same way. So
Yes.
yeah,
And so were we. I definitely wanted to get married and have kids and accomplish that. So that was another one of my dreams. And I lived in the inner city um, as a little girl, but in a very, very nice neighborhood, and wanted to live farther out when I got my own place, and eventually did live farther out, and then eventually moved back closer to the urban core. So, but we did get that dream accomplished. So,
yes,
um, I was really intrigued with your story as we talked, and I'd love to know, how did you meet your husband, and how were you able to fall in love with such a difference in space and time?
yeah. I would have to say, um, a fun fact. I guess I would say my
Yes.
husband is from Gainesville as well. So,
Okay.
um, our families know each other.
Uh-huh.
Our grandmothers knew each other, were friends. My parents went to school together. So, and another fun fact is that my husband's mother, both of our uh,
Uh-huh.
maternals, are from Honey Grove. So, isn't
Oh,
that something?
wow.
And we're
Yes.
from the same smaller town than we grew up in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I would have to say that's where I met my husband is in elementary. I mean, where I knew, I would
Uh-huh.
say first memory of him.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and I can tell you what, and I'm thinking maybe people feel the same as I do. I don't think I've ever thought I wanted to marry someone incarcerated, you
I
know?
see. Uh-huh.
Um, I don't think that's, I think, you have that saying that's, oh, I can't help who I fall in love with. That's kind of my story here.
Yes. 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 Yes.
And I would have to say, he's been a joy, really,
Uh-huh.
for me.
Uh-huh.
I think, where I was in a place in my life, or even the world was in COVID, you didn't know what was going on, and this is like at the
Right.
brink of COVID, like right
Yes.
before, like we're just shutting down, the whole world shutting down. And I would
Right.
have to say that, um, you just don't know the unknown. And for someone like him to have a life sentence, and my husband does have a life sentence,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
um, and have someone, I would have to say, comfort you to,
Yes.
um, bring you joy. It's it's a
Yes.
it's an amazing thing. It's like, how does someone in their environment able
Right.
to speak life and to, encourage and do that for someone else?
That's
Yeah.
wow, that is so awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about your husband's case. You said he is um in prison
Uh-huh.
according to what the laws have said for life. Um, so tell us what happened that got
That
him in this situation, and you can go a little bit deeper and begin to talk about the age he was arrested, some of the witnesses in the case, and then were there threats from the police? So I'll just let you kind of share kind of what happened to him. And
Sure.
then when did you all reunite from
Yeah.
elementary school? So how did all that happen?
Well, um, I would have to say, so my husband, his name is Michael, and
Yes.
he is, so I kind of give you, he's 46, so we're two
Uh-huh.
years apart.
Uh-huh.
And he was 17 during this time,
Wow.
that this, tragic event happened, this
Yes.
incident, this, um, offense. And so, my husband I'll kind of give you a maybe a backstory for that. My
Okay.
husband, it came from a two-parent home as well,
Yes.
and didn't want for anything. I would have to say didn't want, and not, I would have to say, as you would think as well. I'm sure you've had maybe the same sentiment, is that you want always better for your kids than you grew up
Right.
with,
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and so they wanted that. He had uh, a sibling, a sister as well.
Uh-huh.
So we both came from just two kids, what I mean, in the
Yeah.
household, and we're
Mm-hmm.
both the oldest. So
Wow.
yeah, and
Amazing.
mhm. And so I would say he had a great skill set, great family,
Mm-hmm.
home life. He had some athletic genes, I would have to say, in his family.
Yes.
Um, I would have to say Gainesville has a lot of talents. We have out of that small community.
Yes.
But he kind of took after, I think, his dad, and probably both sides. I say they both have some athleticism there. So he
Uh-huh.
really focused on basketball. That was like his thing from,
Wow.
wee child on up. And
Uh-huh.
I mean, when I say he was back there in the backyard practicing, he would be there. But he also, there were things that, in the 90s or 80s, we're not always familiar of maybe struggles that we may have. And
Right.
I think he thought one of his was, reading, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes we can all start off as good readers, and then we fall off and we get other habits or
Uh-huh.
interests.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, it was one of those things. I think, um, reading and comprehension is so important. Even myself, I think at one time I struggled, wanting to read, or, what I mean,
Yes.
finding something
Right.
interesting. And I
Mm-hmm.
say this, that plays a part. People may have, um, reading comprehension issues or dyslexia. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying he has any of those, because I don't believe that he does. I think it's just one of those things that it may make it hard for you to concentrate in school. You just have different things that may happen.
Right.
So I would have to
Right.
say that he was one that loved school. I will say it's just one of those things that with his with basketball and wanting to stay on, you have a pass or play situation, and if you don't pass, you don't play. And it could be
Uh-huh.
like, a grade or a subject that is only 1 or 2 points, but then that kind of
Uh-huh.
crushes you. You know what I mean?
Right, right, right.
And so I would say that I would implore, I just think looking back, coaches, and I know they do that more now. It may not have been some, it just depends on the demographics and the
Yeah.
area and the community that you're in. But I implore every teacher coach to, um, when they have a gifted, a talented
Yes,
person, to really hone in and see, what issues they, because, it could change their whole life and their whole trajectory of life.
absolutely.
Um,
Yes, yes.
I have spoken to a cousin of yours, and she is very big on Miss Sandra on reading,
Uh-huh.
and the statistics behind that. So, and the reason I want to bring that up in the podcast, because I think we have so many that, you know, if you don't understand, they don't have a good foundation or fundamentals of reading or comprehension, then it it could lead to other
Right,
ways of where their life may take them, or it just doesn't.
right.
It should increase their chances. And I for one, am a big believer of that myself. And so,
Mm-hmm.
um, having said that, my husband, um, with the struggles of that, there were some other things. Kids, I can get bullied sometimes. I mean, I
Right.
myself, I had some struggles. I
Uh-huh.
would have to say, when he was in high school, he had made varsity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that was a big deal for a freshman to make varsity. Now, however,
Absolutely. Yes.
I didn't know that, you know, you have those where you have to vote if you're not a junior or
Oh.
senior
Uh-huh.
upperclassman.
Uh-huh.
So at that point, he was kind of voted off of the team, you know.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And I think that also, maybe had a effect of maybe spiraling or wanting to be, I wouldn't say belong, but you want to find your place. You know what I mean?
Right, right. Uh-huh.
And I think, you get influence of some things that maybe uh as a kid you just don't really know,
Right,
and
right.
uh they make you feel belong, they make you feel, special,
Yeah,
and
right.
you can be a part of, them. And so I think um he when he got introduced to a gang life,
Okay.
and it was in a small country, but we have a Gainesville State Schools, we have a Texas Department of Criminal Justice um
Mm-hmm.
has a juvenile division, and it's
Okay.
basically student prison, or it's usually juvenile
Right.
prison. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we had those, kids that come in, and they have these things, but I think sometimes that culture can infiltrate in a child, to
Absolutely.
belong. And so
Yeah.
I think he got exposed to that, and yeah, I would have to say it didn't wasn't so much that Gainesville, you were doing this big, gang thing. It's just I
Uh-huh.
think it was a name thing at that time, and one that,
Yes.
it's not like a secret
Right.
society type thing. But it I think with influences of movies and things of that nature and music, it enhances things. So
Absolutely.
I say that to say that he wasn't the same, but he wasn't, I think, how can I put this? I think his parents didn't want him to go that route, and they
Right.
pleaded with
Right.
him. And my husband said, he he would, maybe run away here, do things like that, and then um they just tried their best to just grab on, hold tight to him, you know what I mean? And
Yes.
help see what they could do to
Yeah.
make sure that he was safe. Because, but other than that, I would have to say he he I think he was on the right path, but sometimes is trying to change, I would have to
Uh-huh.
say.
Uh-huh.
And then he had a car,
Yes.
when he was younger. Um, the car, he always tells me, my car, when I first talked to him about this, he was like, my car got wrecked. And if my car hadn't got wrecked by my friend, I wouldn't have been in the situation I'm in. And I was like, really? And so I'm like, what? How is this? But it made sense somewhat because, you may be used to hanging sometimes with yourself, or some particular friend or whatever. But now, if you hang with your friends out, you're at the mercy of their expense, their car, and
Right.
you're riding
Right.
with them. So
Uh-huh.
my husband had went. Uh, he had been with his cousin, his older cousin, and they
Uh-huh.
were, they were riding around. It's almost summertime.
Uh-huh.
I think it was like a Memorial Day weekend, honestly, Memorial Day,
Uh-huh.
and so they uh they were coming back into town, and
Uh-huh.
um and like I said, teenagers will be teenagers, and
Absolutely.
that's where
Yes.
I can sum it up. Smoking, drinking, whatever they may be doing, but they're just
Uh-huh.
thinking they're having some fun, good fun.
Yeah.
So I think at that point, my husband, he was in the car with his cousin, and in the small towns, we have these situations we call the drag. And the drag is
Yes.
just like a strip of, streets that we just go down, and we're
Yes.
always, and you see your
Mm-hmm.
friends or whatever else, and you're waving, and you just whatever, stop and talk or whatever. So
Uh-huh.
they had just come from that, and they had saw another young man, and he was my husband's cousin's um stepbrother.
Okay.
So at the time, people flagging on, hey man, come over here, what I mean? Can you give me a ride or
Right.
whatever. And that's kind of the situation how it happened. My
Okay.
husband, um, my husband's cousin stopped the car and gave his stepbrother a ride. And I mean, the next 15 minutes of their life changed.
What happened? What happened? What was he accused of doing? What crime is what did he commit according to the
The law.
criminal justice system? Yes.
Okay. So they stopped to get a rap tape at my husband's house, and they saw a older man with a disabled vehicle. Uh, uh, he was a white man that was kind of in our neighbor. I was deemed probably predominantly black neighborhood,
Uh-huh.
and he wanted help with his car. And so they
Hmm.
said, well, no, we can't help you. We're about to go, out of town. So
Uh-huh.
they end up going out of, going their merry way. And at that time, it may have only hit one or two blocks. And
Uh-huh.
um, uh, I would have to say Mr. D, I'll call him
Uh-huh.
that,
Uh-huh.
whatever. He said, well, let me go back. I need to, see if I can make this money. And
Uh-huh.
they're like, we really don't, I have time for that. We really want to go, to our party. And
Hmm.
at that point, they do stop the car. He does stop the car for his cousin. I mean,
Uh-huh.
his brother. And
Yes.
my husband is in the back passenger seat, and
Yes.
Dion's in the front passenger seat. And then there's two other individuals, okay?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Two of Michael's friends in the back seat with him,
Yes.
and then the cousin in the front driving. Well, at that point, you have, they stop the car, and my husband is asked by Dion if he get out. Probably, kids don't want to get out by themselves,
Right.
apparently. Uh, my husband did, and I think he was going to sell some drugs. I mean, he was
Uh-huh.
going to sell some drugs. I don't know what kind of drugs. I think, well, I do, like a crack cocaine type of drug uh,
Okay.
that Dion was going to sell. At that point, he, um, my husband kind of went up there. I guess they were saying they were going to try to help the man and see if
Uh-huh.
maybe. I think my husband thought, okay, we'll see if we help the man. You can do your thing. Well, my husband started to see kind of what transpired. Like, okay, I guess we're not going to help this man. You know what I mean? I guess
Uh-huh.
Deion's not wanting to help this man. I'm going to kind of back away from the situation a little bit because it's kind of getting heated. And my husband started going up the street. So they were in the middle of the road at this time. Mr.
Mhm.
Hanks, the deceased, he had
Uh,
been pushing his car up the road a little bit in the middle. And so my husband kind of just backs away and goes up in the yard of another friend.
uh-huh.
And at that point, they're, kind of all arguing, having a little altercation as far as verbal altercation.
Mhm.
And I don't think it was the outcome that Dion wanted. So he had a gun pointed at the individual and he
Mhm.
shot him. But my
Mhm.
husband didn't see the shot, but I think when he saw he just kind of wanted to get away from the situation.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So
so
your husband did not fire the gun.
mm-mm,
He
no,
did
ma'am.
not shoot it, and it wasn't his gun.
No, no,
So,
not at all.
okay, wow. But
Yeah,
yet he got a life sentence just because he was with
associated and being
this
there.
group.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Just
Uh-huh. And that's so
wow.
important for kids to know. I mean, and
Yes.
parents to know who your kids are, even if it's a family. And I'm not saying the family members back, but I'm just saying it's always important to know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's important.
And
And
so
so,
then when the police came, was the individual already shot and laying on the ground when the police came, or was he dead, or what happened? Was it when the after
well,
the police came, what was going on?
well, so the police came later. So my husband saw him. He said, "Oh, you shot him," and he dropped the gun. He's like, "Yeah," like he's even shocked that he shot him, but
Uh-huh.
he runs off, and then the other guys are around the corner in the
Uh-huh.
car still. Remember, there's three others in the car.
Okay.
At that point, my husband, they turn the car on as soon as they hear, excuse me, the shot, and they come and pick up Michael,
Yeah.
and they ask like, what happened? I hear a shot. He's like, that man
Uh-huh.
got shot, and
Uh-huh.
that's pretty much all he said. But they saw Dion running. He ran off.
Wow.
He did not go back to the car. So they kind of go about their night.
Yeah.
I think they're all in shock. And I mean, my husband's in
Right.
shock because I will say, remember I told you my husband was kind of, I would have to say they called him a menace. I think a lot of misunderstoodness of him, but I'm not saying that I think he's just he was a misunderstood kid. He always took up for the little guy
Yeah.
and, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? The girl, his
Mhm.
girl cousins, things of that nature. So I say that to
So
say,
another thing,
mhm,
you address him as, well, my husband this and my husband that, which is great, but we have to remember, I'm just saying this for our audience,
okay.
that her husband at the time was only 17 years old and they
Yes,
were
I'm sorry.
not married. They were
Right.
not
They're not
married at
married.
this point when all of this stuff is happening. He's a teenager. He's having a good time over the weekend, over the holiday weekend.
Hmm.
Boys will be boys doing what they do. And then
Absolutely.
this happens and
Hmm.
he's
It
caught
changes
in the middle and he doesn't fire the gun. He did not shoot the guy. He was just at the
there at
wrong
the wrong
place
place.
at the wrong time. Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, so when did the police actually arrest him? And did the police arrest all the other guys in the car?
No. So
Uh,
the police arrived, this was probably like a 10 o'clock type in the evening.
uh-huh,
I would have to say, um, he, he actually, was in shock. He didn't know what to do. So that it was a couple of days
uh-huh,
before, and I'll say this, a couple days after, then, um, my husband is told that he needs to go and turn himself in,
okay. This
uh
is 2 days later.
first. Well, I would have to say probably 1st of June. So almost a week later, pretty much a week later from this incident.
Okay.
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 But the police came and they did their assessment of the crime and
Uh-huh.
said that, the gentleman was dead. At that point, they're looking for suspects or these things are going on. Well, lo and behold, sometimes the first one gets the deal. You know what I mean? And all. And so,
Uh-huh.
my husband and they were from the quote unquote same gang,
Yes.
affiliation, but they were not friends.
Yes.
So that's another thing that was my husband was kind of a danged if he did, danged if he didn't
Yes.
situation. I mean, he was in a catch
Right.
22. And I say that because
Right.
sometimes in these smaller towns and known as, miss, the police are looking to get you and they're going to
Right.
get their mission is to get you. I'm not saying that in
Right.
a bad way or negative way, but you have to be mindful as a child, the things
Yes.
that you do. And so,
Mhm.
or what they're trying to do is catch you. You know what I mean? They
Right.
had I would have to say in the 90s, uh, during the Clinton era, they had this war on, uh,
Uh-huh.
I kind of put it, not drugs, but war on crime.
Yes.
And it was like they were tough on it and they were calling these kids super predators, and they were wanting them
Right.
away.
Right.
Okay. And I will
Exactly.
say this, there's a movie called The 13th Amendment. And,
Uh-huh.
it shows the progression of uh, the mass incarceration in this country.
Yes. Yes.
And so I mentioned that because it's very important for kids. In Texas, we have, Texas is huge, massive Lone Star State. We
Mm-hmm.
started building more prisons
Mm.
in the early uh, 1990s. And I think it's
Wow.
for, that reason. It's a
Uh-huh.
$1 billion, to me, modern slavery business
Wow.
enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
So I say that to say, you know, everything is formulated and planned for a reason in
Mm-hmm.
sometimes government. And I think that we have to
Yes.
be mindful of those things so that we
Mm-hmm.
can protect our children and make them aware of things. So
Yes.
I'll go on to my husband being arrested.
Yes.
He turned himself and he heard that he needed to speak to him, but I think he didn't realize he was going to be arrested that day.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
He ends up um, going turned himself in. Now he did it on his own, first he was supposed to wait for his father. And I think the fact of it is he didn't want anything happening at his home with his sister and mother. Okay, he was trying to be
Yes.
that protector. So he went
Right.
ahead and took it was a Bill's bondsman that took him up to the police station and he told him
Mm-hmm.
not to talk until you have a lawyer. But I just thought, well, I don't know if that's his place to take him up there. Me diving in and researching after the fact, but he does. And my husband goes up there and he talks to the magistrate and she
Mm-hmm.
charges him with capital murder. And I think he was not, he was taken back. You know what I mean? He's like, I've been in a little
Wow.
trouble here and there, you know,
Yes.
Mr. Bean, but this is something whoa above my,
Right.
yeah, um, above
Mm.
anything that I could ever imagine on on himself. I think it was
Yes.
just like, it was a lot. So he says
Mm-hmm.
that he wants to speak to an attorney. And she said, okay, because he asked, would you like to say anything? No, I'd like to speak to an
Mm-hmm.
attorney.
Uh-huh.
And so she said, okay. And she lets him go into this interrogation room. In the interrogation room, there's a Detective Williams, Ronnie Williams. He basically comes in and he says, hey, let me know, tell me tell me what happened, and he says, well, I need to talk to a lawyer. He says, can no lawyer help you now, boy? Basically, he says, boy, can no lawyer help you
Uh-huh.
now, boy?
Wow.
And he says,
Mm.
so you need to just start talking. We finally got you. And I say that to
Wow.
say, if my husband did do the right thing, which is in Texas, you must say when a crime has been committed,
Uh-huh.
because if not, you're an accomplice, you're accessory after the fact, before the fact. And so I would have to say that at that point, I don't know. I don't know. It just that's that catch 22 I was telling you about.
Yeah. So
Um,
I wonder, so he goes in and it sounds like they tried to make like a plea deal with him some kind of way that, or either the interrogation was almost kind of like a bully kind of a situation. You did this. Why did you kill this man? Or
Yes,
you were
yes.
on the scene or something uh
Yeah.
that made him cave in. And I don't know.
Well, yeah,
Did
no, you're on the right track. Dr. Evelyn, it was the situation that I said the first one gets the deal. So he had already been told on, that he had did this
Okay.
crime. They'd already had a narrative out there. Yeah. So
Wow. So somebody else that had been picked up
yes,
said it was him.
yes, it sure
Wow.
has said it was him.
Lied on him. Lied on him.
Lied on him. Yeah. Yeah. So
Oh
at
my
that point, and then
goodness.
you have people that, maybe corroborate the story, but don't know the story because they weren't there. It was just them two.
Right.
However, you've had this situation where he's like, and I'll say this, if people don't know, you have this thing that the investigators can do, and it's called the read technique. And that means that
Wow.
they can lie to you in order to
Yes.
get the
Information. They can
yes, in
say
order to
so
get
and
their
so.
statement,
Yeah.
their
Yes.
confession, whatever it is that they want, they can get
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
And we often
Wow.
seen that in movies like Central Park Five and other
Yes.
countless people. Um,
Yes.
so at that point, my husband tells the story. He talks,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
he tells it what happened, and then the investigator says, "I don't believe you. You're
Yes.
not leaving here till you said that you did it."
Yes.
And that's
Wow.
mhm.
So, and he
And
was
he's in there with
tired.
no parent. I mean, even though
Yes.
in Texas, 17 is legally an adult and you're going to be
Adult.
tried as an adult.
Okay.
But there
So,
was no parent in the room.
wow, that is so unfortunate, and I just hate that. So, two more questions. We're running a
Mhm.
little bit out of time, but we
Okay.
will have you back because I need to know more information. But two questions I have for you immediately. Number one, you mentioned 2020. I think that is the year you are reconnected somehow. Kind of, how did that
Yes,
happen?
ma'am.
Okay, and then the second question is, when did you know that you wanted to get married to to,
Okay.
to him? Okay,
Okay. Well, I'll kind of wrap that other one up. So he ends up confessing. Okay. So everybody
okay,
knows that he ends up confessing to this crime because they play a tape 37 minutes later. There was a gap within 37 minutes
yes,
later. And then my husband's read Miranda rights and he does not understand it. And he tells them he does not understand it, but they keep
okay.
going. So that
Wow,
ends up where he doesn't ever see the light of day after June 2nd, 1996. Okay.
wow. Okay,
Now, how we connect, I would have to say almost 24 years later. Yeah.
okay. Woo.
In 2020 is that
Okay,
he had like I said, we're from the same hometown, so we know people and uh we connected through phone
uh-huh.
conversations. And I was kind of shocked to hear that he was on the phone. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh my
Yes.
goodness. And
Huh.
I was like, I have not heard of, sometimes you think about people throughout, the years and things of that nature. And I always did if I, passed by a prison or just think about him, period. You hear, about,
Mhm.
I'm like, whoa, where's the family? Because my in-laws end up moving out of
Okay,
Gainesville at that time in
okay,
99.
okay,
So he and I just started talking. I kind of was curious, like, oh my goodness. He's like, do you remember me? I'm like, yeah, I do. So I guess, the thing of it was, um, I talked to him through someone else, and
uh-huh,
so another cousin of mine. But however, I'll say that to say is that I was shocked, and he left an impression on me that day,
uh-huh,
and like I said, he was kidding because I guess he had this crush on me. He said in high school or junior high.
uh-huh. Mhm.
Um, and I was like. okay. But I guess he wanted me to have the same crush back. And I said, okay. I was like, I don't think I did, but I thought you were very cute. You know what I mean? He
Uh-huh.
was a handsome boy. So I just he said, well, hopefully we can talk again another time. And I
Uh-huh.
said, well, I have a boyfriend, but I
Uh-huh.
didn't.
Uh-huh.
So that led us to eventually just kind of talking again. But I had that initial conversation. I think, he was telling me he was waiting on a juvenile bill to
Okay.
pass.
Okay.
And that would have been somewhat maybe a ticket of a chance of freedom.
Okay.
And he told me some aspirations, and it just didn't sound. I don't know. It just didn't sound typical. He just really kind of inspired me what he said. So I just
Uh-huh.
thought, I'm just, but from afar, he doesn't know that he's inspired me. Anyway, I go to my parents' house and visit them. At this point, I live in a Dallas suburb called, Louisville, and I'm going home to them, and I'm just like, I asked my mom, what do you think about Michael? In his case, like, because we had a lot going on, my grandmother passing at that time, and so. I knew about it when it happened or whatever, but I just didn't know the story and everything else. And I said, "Do you think he got railroaded, Mom?" He said, "Yeah, I do." And I guess he just resonated with me that whole weekend.
Mm.
Seriously. And I kind of longed to speak to him again because I just was curious about it. Just that initial conversation made me want to talk to him and like figure out like what went wrong, what happened.
Uh-huh.
And so my
Uh-huh.
curiosity got to me. And so we end up still like messaging, well, he would message, but I would, ask if I could be put on the phone, so that
Uh-huh.
I could talk to him. And so we eventually got that set up and we just kind of started talking. He found out eventually I didn't have a boyfriend. So
Yes. Yes.
at that point, he kind of was like, yeah, he would really like to,
Mm-hmm.
see if we could be together in some
Uh-huh.
way.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, um, I don't know. I think I just felt comfortable after that.
Yeah.
I felt at home with him,
Yes.
and you know, he he ended up just really being just a blessing to me, during that
Uh-huh.
time with COVID and things. And we just talked about things, and he just, like I said, somebody serving a life sentence in a maximum security prison, and they got going on, and they just asking about you, and he always, Miss Evelyn, wanted to keep himself in the world.
Uh-huh.
You know, you've been incarcerated since you're 17, and then now you're, in your early 40s. And
Yes.
I think that was amazing to me that he's like, that's how my mindset was. And to always not to let the incarceration take over him and his mind.
That's good. Did he have a relationship with the Lord? Is
He does. He
uh
does.
how does he focus on the Lord, and is he educating himself around how to get out, how to legally get out of
Get
there?
out. Mhm.
Kind of,
Yeah. Well, so, he has had, I'll tell you how he's stayed in that mindset for so long, or I'll have to say just how he's gotten through this
yeah.
lifetime is with his family. His family is a great support
Okay.
system for him. I mean, when I
Okay.
say they have been there through the ups, down, the losses, they have
Yes.
been there.
Wow.
And that is an important part of incarceration, unfortunately. You know what I mean? It's a
Yes.
sacrifice, that a
Yes.
major
Yes.
sacrifice. And I would
Right.
have to say that my husband, when he went in, was 17. He was upset. He was mad at the world, because he
Yeah.
felt like he didn't get a fair trial.
Right.
And
Right.
at that point, he does go return to the gang life.
Yes.
And they're at what they call rock and roll units, and he is rocking and roll. They are having riots. They are having, because now with his charge, he's put into this environment, and they put him in the worst and worst of environments.
Wow. Mhm.
So at that point, you have him. eventually transitioning from a boy into a man.
Yeah.
That's what he's having to grow up to.
Almost instantly.
Yes.
Instantly.
I mean, a baby, and he's a baby from a small town. He's not from
Yes.
Dallas or Fort Worth or Houston or
Yes.
San Antonio.
Yes.
He's from a small
Right.
town, so he has to
Yeah.
prove himself. He has to do all those things. So he's put in an environment that most young boys may not survive.
Yes.
So I say that
Absolutely.
to say he was angry. I mean, his parents and his family talked to him, and I think his aunt was very uh, much of a catalyst of saying you need to ask for forgiveness for
Yeah.
maybe how possibly you could have gotten here,
Yes.
but then also you need to get to know the Lord,
Wow.
and
Okay.
eventually he started to I would
Mm-hmm.
have to say it maybe take years. And I'll have to say this: when my husband having the highest capital offense or charge,
Mm-hmm.
and my husband was faced with the death penalty. I'll let people know he
Yes.
was faced with the death penalty at 17. So you have all these things, and when you're in the system like that, you have a situation where you don't get to have schooling until um I would have to say almost a decade later.
Wow.
Uh-huh. So
My
I
goodness.
had learned that about him, that you could not educate yourself until 10 years, I think, in the Department
Oh
of Criminal
my goodness.
Justice.
Wow.
So that's something I want to tell you. So he did end up getting his GED,
Yeah.
and then took some classes and stuff at got a certificate at some institutions and stuff. He didn't go for his associates yet, but I think that was one of those things that his sister and then was trying to get him to eventually do. But he
Uh-huh.
did start going to church, and
Uh-huh.
he, he's a leader, unfortunately, you know what I mean? And I
Yes.
think he was leader in a bad way, leading a gang in
Yes.
prison. But then
Uh-huh.
he also, when he found the Lord, he started going to church and things of that nature. And he had this, he was leading other people. They would want to go to church, and he would,
Oh, that's awesome.
so
Yes.
that, yeah, he had a profound effect. I would have to say when we got together, he had kind of stopped going to church, but he had had a foundation where he had been at church, and he
Okay.
remembered me, I guess, as young girl going to church and how my family was. So I had kind of told him I had backslid.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, when we started being together, he was like, "Man, you're going to start going to church, and we're going to start, you know what I mean? You're going to get back
Yeah.
into your
Yeah.
faith." And he said, "But I'm right
Yes.
now, I don't want to teeter both the fences, it's nothing like a made up mind." So he was one of those like, "Okay, we're going to get you here first, and
Right.
then
Right.
I'm going to get there." But he wanted me to accept, he asked me to accept him for who he was at that moment in time. He had
Mm-hmm.
had classes that he has taken, like authentic manhood, and helps you it helps men in their
Mm-hmm.
to see how to be a man biblically in that
Mm-hmm.
way, and possibly be a husband and a father as
Uh-huh.
well. So he
Okay.
had taken these courses, throughout, like Bridges to Life. There's
Mm-hmm.
Overcomers. There's all these the classes that he was taking to prepare himself for. He's always said he's wanted to be a husband. I mean, his
Mm-hmm.
family has taught him that. His dad taught him how to provide. Showed him how to
Mm-hmm.
provide for his family, and his mother
Mm-hmm.
taught him, the importance of
Mm-hmm.
a woman or a wife one day, that
Uh-huh.
so
Well,
that
Miss
always stuck with
Amber,
him.
yeah. Oh, that is so awesome. Well, listen, we have had a wonderful time. We have run out of time, and
Okay.
I got at least five more questions. So
Okay.
we definitely have to come back.
Okay.
We're going to have to bring you back. I'd like to hear how did he escape being beat up, or some of the other horror stories that you hear happen to individuals when they're incarcerated, and especially the young guys, because when they're real
Hmm.
young, lots of things can
Oh
happen.
yeah.
So we'll talk about that, and then I really appreciated you sharing how he really wanted to make a relationship with the Lord and wanted to make sure you were in
Hmm.
good standing with the Lord also, and how that has developed over the years,
Hmm.
and how do you we'll talk about this on our next
Okay.
show, but how uh, after you all decide to get married, where did that take place? We'll talk about all this there, and
Okay.
you know, we're
How's the
family
journey there? You know.
present and all that. So we got lots more to talk about, and even his influence now over the others that are in jail. How is he able to influence them? And then what we didn't talk about is the team that's working together to get him out.
Yeah.
The attorneys, all of that. So we still got lots of stuff to talk about. So Amber, thank you again for being on our show tonight. You were a wonderful guest. And to our audience, thank you for spending this time with us. This is Dr. Evelyn Hill with Shades in Justice podcast. Remember, you can always get me at www.drevelynhill.net. Until next time, remember, we serve a God who loves justice. Bye bye.
Amen.